The story will be a dramatic and emotional introduction focusing on the proud, sharp-minded billionaire sheikh who is unexpectedly challenged by his humble servant. The scene will open with tension that reveals the sheikh's imperious nature and pride. The opulence of the emirate and palace will set the backdrop. The servant's disrespectful provocation ignites the central conflict. The narrative will develop their explosive exchange, underscored by the stark social contrast and the burgeoning intrigue about the servant's hidden talents and secret past. The chapter will close on a cliffhanger, revealing a mysterious facet of the servant, with a compelling call to action inviting viewers to engage eagerly. "If you're so smart, translate this," mocked the billionaire sheikh at his poor servant. Then stayed. The opulent halls of the sheikh's palace were steeped in a silence so profound it seemed to swallow every breath. At the heart of this silence stood the billionaire sheikh, his piercing gaze sharp as scimitars, his pride an unyielding fortress. His every step was a declaration of power, resonating through golden corridors adorned with silks and a scent of exotic incense that lingered even in the cold desert night. The sheikh's mind was a tempest of calculation and unchallenged superiority. Until now, outside his private chamber, the low murmur of footsteps approached. A servant, cloaked in threadbare garments, but with eyes ablaze with quiet defiance, came closer. The sheikh's disdain was palpable as he turned, lips curling with contempt. "You presume to mock me? To question the brilliance that has carved empires from dust?" His voice was icy, a thin veil over the storm of wounded ego. The servant bowed, but his voice cut through the grandeur with unexpected sharpness. "If you are so clever, translate this riddle I offer," he said, a flash of smirk betraying his humble exterior. "Or are your riches only armor for a fragile mind, easily bruised?" A hush fell, the air tightening like a coiled serpent around the room. The billionaire sheikh's chest constricted, a surge of fury laced with an unfamiliar sting of doubt. "Do you test me, insolent shadow? Know that I accept your challenge, not for your sake, but to silence the folly that dares speak against me." Their eyes locked, a battlefield of pride against quiet genius, master against servant. The scented air seemed thick with an unspoken war. The servant's fingers twitched, sleeves falling back to reveal scarred hands and a subtle gleam of something more. An intellect veiled beneath humility, perhaps a history buried in the shadows of the desert dunes. The sheikh's mind raced, his heart pounding against the gilded cage of his chest. This was no simple jibe. The servant's dare was a spark in dry tinder, threatening to ignite truths that could unravel the sheikh's reign of pride. What secret came cloaked in riddle and mockery? What hidden strength lay beneath those worn clothes? Before the sheikh could muster his retort, a faint whisper reached his ears. Rumors of the servant's past, whispered in the palace murmur. A past wrapped in cunning and survival, far from the humble man the world saw. The game had begun, and the lines between master and servant blurred in the desert's golden light. Loyalties tested, pride wounded, and an alliance forged not by wealth, but by shared secrets and fevered hearts. And before the next secret from this desert palace unfolds, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be forged, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if this billionaire Sheikh's sharp pride has already caught your heart. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga and what twist do you think lies ahead? Your passion for these tales is what drives us forward. Thank you for traveling with us. The tension in the grand hall was almost tangible, pressing down on everyone present like the desert heat outside. The billionaire Sheikh stood tall amid the golden mosaics and towering columns, his face a mask of regal imperiousness. Yet beneath that polished exterior, his eyes flickered with an edge that had been sharpened by the insolence of a lowly servant, daring to challenge his authority. The humble servant, whose name was whispered only by those closest to the palace walls, met the Sheikh's unforgiving gaze without flinching. His threadbare robe did nothing to hide the fire burning deep within his amber eyes. He knew the stakes. Every word he uttered was a dangerous game, in a place where one wrong move could mean ruin. You question the brilliance that has built this empire? The Sheikh's voice cut through the stillness, sharp as a scimitar, slicing desert air. He stepped closer, the jewels on his robe glittering under the lantern light, each step echoing the wealth and power that surrounded him. The servant smiled, a faint, almost mocking curl of his lips. I do not question those who think themselves untouchable, he said quietly, but I do challenge those whose pride blinds them to the truth. He straightened, the flicker of a hidden strength palpable beneath his modest appearance. Translate this riddle, and you may find that riches alone are not the measure of wisdom. A hush spread through the room. The opulence clashed starkly with the servant's defiance, a man of dust and shadows, standing unbowed before a man of gold and light. The Sheikh's chest tightened. The insult was undeniable, but so was the challenge, coiling like a serpent around his ego. His jaw clenched, the pulse thrumming in his temples, betraying the cool composure he usually maintained. Speak, he commanded, voice low and dangerous, or be swept away by your own foolishness. The servant's lips parted, revealing the riddle like a whispered curse. I am taking from a mine and shut in a wooden case, from which I am never released, and yet I am used by all. What am I? The Sheikh's mind raced, the puzzle sparking a fire of curiosity beneath his rage. His empire had been built on decisions made in moments like this, calculated risks, hidden gambits. But this was different. This riddle was more than a game. It was a veiled test. Who was this servant who had the audacity to engage him on this level? Suddenly, a shimmer from the servant's sleeve caught the flickering firelight, a glimpse of fine craftsmanship beneath the worn fabric. The bracelet was delicate, unlike any token worn by the servants of the palace. A symbol? A relic? The Sheikh's sharp eyes noted it, curiosity battling suspicion. Answer me, the Sheikh growled, and you may yet save your tongue from severance. The servant's eyes sparked with quiet triumph. Pencil, he said simply. Silence cracked. The answer was correct. For a moment, the Sheikh's fierce facade wavered. None had so brazenly dared test him, and succeeded. The servants of the palace were usually shadows, unseen, unheard. This man was different, a mystery cloaked in humility, his wisdom hidden behind a veil of simplicity. But there was more beneath that calm exterior. Whispers spread through the palace like desert wind, rumors of the servants' past. Some spoke of vanished tribes, fierce desert warriors who survived on cunning and will. Others hinted at a forgotten lineage, a bloodline far removed from mere servitude. Could this man truly be what the rumors hinted? Something more than a servant? Perhaps a force waiting to be unleashed? The sheikh turned abruptly, his cloak swirling like a desert storm. His mind churned with questions and unease, a rare vulnerability threading through his pride. If this man was more than he appeared, what game was he playing? And what did he seek within the golden walls that had always been the sheikh's fortress? In the distance, the soft murmur of the palace guards grew. Whispers floated down the halls. The emir's envoy was arriving, a figure whose presence promised to unsettle the delicate balance of power. The servant caught a glimpse of the approaching sign, his eyes reflecting a shadow of urgency. The air thickened with unspoken tension. Loyalties would be tested, secrets would unravel. And beneath it all, a forbidden truth hovered, ready to shatter the fragile facade of the sheikh's ordered world. The billionaire sheikh's voice cut through the growing silence, colder now, edged with a hard resolve. You may have won this round, but the desert is vast, and I am its storm. The servant stepped back, bowing slightly, but with a glint of defiance still burning in his gaze. And every storm reveals what lies beneath the sands, he replied softly. As the golden light of dusk spilled through the palace windows, the sheikh's eyes narrowed, locking on to the servant's retreating figure. There was more at stake here than pride or riddles. It was a battle for truth, power, and perhaps an alliance neither could yet fathom. In that charged moment, as shadows stretched long across the marble floor, the secrets buried deep within both men began to stir, threatening to break free like the relentless desert winds. And as the palace doors creaked open to welcome a new chapter in this fragile story, the sheikh understood. The game had only just begun. The amber dusk deepened over the vast emirate, casting long shadows that danced like secrets among the gilded walls of the palace. The air inside shimmered with heat and tension, charged with the silent storm that had erupted between the billionaire sheikh and his enigmatic servant. The servants whispered cautiously, their eyes darting between the throne room and the dim corridors where the servant had disappeared moments before. The sheikh remained standing alone, his fingers clenched into fists at his sides, the aftertaste of defeat bitter on his tongue. The riddle, so simple, yet so piercing, reverberated through his proud mind. A pencil, a mere pencil, had humiliated him, unraveling the facade of his unshakable brilliance. His gaze drifted to where the servant had withdrawn, cloaked once more in humility. But the spark in those amber eyes haunted him. Unlike the polished courtiers who bent like reeds, this man bore an untamed fire beneath that worn exterior. The palace seemed to breathe around him. The flickering lantern flames cast shadows of turmoil across the marble floor. The scent of oud mingled with the faint whisper of desert wind, seeping through open windows. The opulence felt suddenly hollow, weighed down by the dizzying pull of uncertainty. Minutes passed in silence before the heavy door creaked. The servant re-entered, his steps measured yet confident, unshaken by the lingering storm between them. The sheikh's eyes sharpened, every muscle taut with a mixture of suspicion and grudging respect. "You tread dangerous grounds." The sheikh's voice was low but resolute, echoing off the ornate walls. "Few have dared to cross me and live to see another dawn." The servant's smile was thin but unreadable. "Perhaps, but some truths are worth the risk, even for a shadow cast under." Gilded feet. They faced each other, two worlds clashing within the same room. The servant's quiet defiance stirred an unfamiliar restlessness in the sheikh's chest, a question that prickled beneath his pride. "Why this challenge?" the sheikh demanded. "Why risk everything with riddles and provocations? What do you truly seek beneath the mask of servitude?" For a heartbeat, the servant's eyes flickered with something unspoken. A storm held at bay. Then he spoke, voice steady, a test of wisdom and of trust. His hand brushed against the intricate bracelet concealed beneath his sleeve, the delicate silver filigree catching the firelight like a hidden promise. The sheikh's gaze flicked again to the bracelet. Its craftsmanship was exquisite, far beyond what any servant should possess. It was a relic, a cipher, or perhaps an emblem of a past he was yet to uncover. "Trust?" the sheikh echoed, voice colder now. "Why should I trust the one who dares mock my name, who brushes against my empire like a desert wind, felt but unseen? Because sometimes the fiercest storms arise from the quietest gusts." Before the servant could answer, footsteps thundered down the corridor. The palace guards hurried in, their faces tense. A messenger approached, his expression grim as he bowed before the sheikh. "The emir's envoy has arrived," the messenger said, voice clipped. "They bear urgent news and a summons that cannot wait." The sheikh straightened, the sharp gleam in his eye returning with renewed vigor. The fragile veneer of confidence had been cracked, but the fire within now burned brighter. A controlled blaze, ready to consume any threat. The servant watched silently as the sheikh's mind raced. The arrival of the envoy promised a ripple across the palace's delicate balance, potentially upheaving alliances and testing loyalties. "Tell me," the sheikh said, turning abruptly, "how did you come to possess such knowledge, such courage? There is more to you than the tattered cloak you wear." The servant's gaze held steady, revealing no trace of fear, only a deep well of hidden scars and fierce resolve. "My past is etched in deserts forgotten, and secrets whispered under starlit skies. Some battles are fought long before the palace gates." A flash of something fierce passed through the sheikh's eyes. Recognition, perhaps regret, or a wary intrigue. The message in that moment was clear. The servant was no mere shadow. He was a force poised on the edge of revelation, and the sheikh's reign might rest on how well he understood the enigma standing before him. As the two men stood within the opulence of golden columns, and the scent of ancient spices. The quiet walls seemed to close in, bearing witness to a pact yet to be forged, a collision of power, pride, and secrets waiting to unravel. The servant's hand slipped beneath his sleeve, fingers brushing the bracelet once more. His voice dropped to a whisper only the sheikh could hear. The desert does not forget its children, and neither do I. A pulse of tension rippled through the room as the sheikh's eyes narrowed, the weight of that cryptic promise sinking deep into his soul. The palace suddenly felt less like a fortress and more like a cage, where truths and lies would battle for dominance beneath the endless desert sky. And in the gathering twilight, as the stars emerged one by one, the billionaire sheikh understood with a sudden, chilling clarity. The greatest storm he would face was yet to arrive, and it carried the name of the servant who dared to defy kings. The palace corridors whispered beneath the twilight's golden grasp, every echo a proof of the tension that clung to the air like desert dust before a storm. The billionaire sheikh paced with regal fury, his every breath heavy with indignation and curiosity. The riddle, so simple yet profound, had unsettled the foundation of his self-assured dominion, a mere pencil. How could something so humble pierce the armor of his invincibility? His eyes, sharp and calculating, sought the servant who had dared to speak such insolence. The man had vanished momentarily into the labyrinthine halls, leaving behind a trail of quiet defiance that burned brighter than the glare of the chandeliers. It was as if, beneath those worn robes, hid a fire no opulence could contain. The sheikh's lips tightened as a sudden step came into view. The servant returned, head held high, amber eyes flickering with a mixture of challenge and unyielding calm. The contrast between the palace brilliance and his modest attire could not have been more stark. Yet the servant moved as though the gold and silk were but shadows in comparison to his unwavering spirit. "You have unsettled more than my pride." The sheikh's voice was low, but filled with undercurrents of alarm and intrigue. "Few have the audacity to test me so directly and live to see the dawn. Why provoke me with riddles? What do you seek beyond mere insolence?" The servant's gaze held like a torchlight, cutting through encroaching darkness. Not insolence, but a test. Of wisdom, yes, but also of trust. A trust that is forged only when truth is faced boldly, without the veils of gold and power. A rare silence fell between them, a fragile moment suspended like a delicate glass hanging by a thread. The sheikh studied the servant's trembling hand beneath the sleeve. A hint of silver filigree glimmered softly in the dwindling light. The craftsmanship was exquisite, foreign to the trappings of a mere palace slave. It spoke of hidden histories, of paths crossed far beyond these marble walls. "You wear more than a servant's shame on your arm," the sheikh said, voice now an edge of cold suspicion and reluctant wonder. "Whose mark is that?" The servant's eyes briefly darkened, with memories buried deep beneath relentless sands. "A reminder of those I lost and of the promises I made in shadows where even the stars refused to look." The winds outside swept a cool breath through the open window, stirring the scent of oud and jasmine. It mingled with the thrum of unease in the room, as if the desert itself leaned in to eavesdrop on secrets and motion. Before the sheikh could press for answers, loud footsteps stormed through the corridors. Several guards appeared, their expressions etched with urgency and caution. A messenger stepped forward, the weight of his presence pressing heavily in the charged atmosphere. "The emir's envoy has arrived," he announced crisply, bowing with gravity. Unusual requests accompany them, and warnings. The sheikh's steely eyes sharpened, the fire of command reigniting within him. The fragile fissure in his calm had cracked, but something stronger, more focused, took shape. The game had changed. The arrival of the envoy meant threads of power were about to unravel or weave anew. Turning toward the servant, the sheikh's gaze was a storm contained. "How is it that you know all this? What hand do you play in the intrigues swirling beyond these walls?" The servant's expression was a tight mask, but within it, the unspoken words lingered. "I have survived deserts where trust is currency and silence can mean death. I tread where others fear to set foot. This palace is but one chapter in a long story, etched by blood and cunning." The sheikh felt a flicker of something unfamiliar slice through his pride. A recognition of pain and resilience mirrored in the servant's eyes. Yet questions seethed beneath the surface. Was this man an ally or a threat? Could pride alone shield him when shadows from the past stepped closer? The whisper of silks brushing marble was interrupted by a subtle but urgent movement, the servant's fingers tracing the edge of the bracelet. Fingers steady despite the tension. "The desert," he murmured, voice barely above the shifting wind, "never forgets its children." As the stars blinked awake in the vast desert sky, the palace seemed to pulse with anticipation, an ancient place poised on the edge of revelation. The sheikh's mind raced, heart pounding beneath the layers of royal finery. His voice cut through the stillness, a challenge, a warning, and a hint of newfound respect. "This is not the end of your test. The desert's secrets run deep, and so do mine. Tomorrow, your truth will face fire." From the shadows of the ornate doorway, a soft rustle caught his attention. His sharp eyes met the steady, unreadable gaze of the servant, whose calm defiance had shifted something fundamental within him. The air tightened as the silent promise hung unspoken between them. A pact forged in the crucible of power, pride, and unrelenting mystery. And just as the first notes of the approaching envoy echoed through the distant halls, the servant dropped a final, chilling whisper that reverberated like thunder through the quiet palace. "Beware the name I carry, for it is a storm that could bring empires to their knees." The heavy curtains of the grand hall shuddered softly as a sudden gust swept through the open windows, stirring the scent of oud and rosewater that lingered in the warm desert air. The opulence of the palace felt almost oppressive. Gilded pillars and intricately carved arches, casting long shadows that mirrored the tension thickening the room. The billionaire sheikh stood rigid, his chest still rising and falling with rapid breaths, dark eyes ablaze, not only with pride, but an unfamiliar flicker of doubt. His usual imperious calm was fractured after the servant's unexpected triumph. A simple riddle answered with chilling ease. The servant had returned now, his footsteps steady and sure, every movement hinting at restrained power that unsettled the very foundation of the Sheikh's world. "You walk a narrow path, Shadow," the Sheikh said, voice low but biting. The words themselves, a question masked in command. "Few dare to mock the bloodline that built this empire and live to see another dawn." The servant met his gaze without flinching, amber eyes shimmering like desert fire beneath the softly flickering lantern light. "Mockery is not my intention," he replied smoothly, "but perhaps to remind a king that wisdom wears many faces, and that arrogance is a veil easily torn." A slow smirk tugged at the picture, edge of the Sheikh's lips, a grudging respect fighting against the sting of wounded pride. "Wisdom?" he echoed, stepping closer, the gold embroidery of his robe catching the light as if to assert his status. "Speak freely, then, and tell me what shadow conceals beneath threadbare cloth. Who challenges the throne from the dust?" The servant's glance flickered to the ornate silver bracelet hidden beneath his sleeve, an emblem of a past too intricate to voice outright. "A pawn does not choose the game, but I am no pawn. Once I was more than servitude and silence. There are deserts I have crossed that few dare to enter, and battles fought in shadows where loyalty is measured in blood." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, 1,000 unspoken questions hanging between them. The palace walls witnessed their fragile standoff, the prince and the servant, bound by secrets neither dared name aloud. "Then speak your truth," the Sheikh demanded, the sharp edge in his voice betraying the tempest beneath his calm exterior. Before the servant could answer, a sudden noise shattered the moment. Heavy footsteps, echoing through the marble corridors, urgent, commanding. Guards appeared, their faces taut with unease, leading a messenger who bowed deeply before the Sheikh. "The Emir's envoy has arrived," the man announced, voice clipped but weighted with import. "They bring warnings and demands." The room seemed to breathe in that instant, the atmosphere crackling with electricity. The fragile equilibrium of the palace, veiled in gold, began to tremble. The servant's gaze shifted to the messenger, then back to the Sheikh, eyes hardening with a mix of anticipation and caution. "What demands?" The Sheikh's voice was steel, cutting through the air like a scimitar poised for battle. The messenger hesitated, then spoke. "The Emir commands your presence with urgency. There is unrest in the northern borders, whispers of rebellion fueled by a traitor close to the throne. The envoy's arrival signals a summons that cannot be ignored." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, a storm swirling behind his eyes. His empire, so carefully constructed, threatened by treachery deep within. He glanced at the servant, this man, half shadow, half enigma, whose riddles were already entwined with the fate of the emirate. "No more of these whispers than you let on," the Sheikh said, voice laced with suspicion and hunger for truth. "What role do you truly play in this unfolding game?" The servant's lips curled into a knowing smile, the fire in his gaze unwavering. "My place is where the unseen battles rage, where secrets cost lives. I am a sword hidden in the dust, waiting for the moment to strike." A silence fell, heavy and tense, as the magnitude of unspoken stories pressed upon them. The Sheikh felt the weight of an empire on fragile edges, his pride wrestling with the provocative presence before him. "I will go to the emir," he declared, voice steady, yet the shadows in his eyes hinted at turmoil. "But remember, Shadow, the desert does not forget, and neither do I." The servant stepped closer, voice a mere breath now. "Then we are both bound by storms, storms that can either destroy or forge something stronger." The flickering lanterns cast long, intertwining shadows of two men, locked in a silent pact, one of power, one of promise. The grandeur of the palace seemed suddenly less like a sanctuary, and more a battleground of hidden truths. Outside, the desert night thickened, stars blinking cold and distant. Within those walls, pride and secrets danced dangerously close to open war. And then, as if the desert itself conspired with fate, the servant's toned voice dropped to a whisper that lingered in the charged silence. "The truth I carry will break chains stronger than gold." The Sheikh's hand tightened into a fist, barely containing the tempest roiling inside. The servant turned, slipping away like a shadow cast by the moonlight. But one final thought echoed relentlessly in the Sheikh's mind as the palace doors closed behind him. The greatest storm is yet to come, and it wears the servant's face. The emir's envoy had crossed the threshold just as twilight folded the palace in shadows deep and gold. The grand hall's opulence, silk-draped columns, the gleam of precious stones, and the heavy scent of incense felt suddenly like a gilded cage tightening around the Sheikh's chest. He stood with the rigid grace of a born sovereign. But beneath the polished veneer of authority, a torrent of unease churned. The servant's words and the shadowy implications of his past echoed relentlessly in his mind. The messenger's crisp voice broke the tense silence. "The unrest at the northern borders grows rampant, my lord. Reports of rebellion led by an unknown faction and whispers of betrayal from within your closest circle." The Sheikh's dark eyes narrowed. His empire, built from dust and ambition, now teetered on the edge of upheaval. A cold knot tightened deep in his stomach. His gaze flicked toward the servant, whose amber eyes reflected the flickering lantern light like twin flames of defiance and hidden knowledge. "You must accompany me to the emir's tent. Your presence is required." To face this threat, the envoy continued, bowing once more before retreating silently. The servant's expression remained unreadable, but resolute. Near him, the rich tapestries swayed gently as a desert breeze slipped through a half-open window, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant storms. The sheikh approached the servant, every step a clash of regality and raw emotion. "You brought this upon us, Shadow. Your riddles were but whispers of unseen dangers. Now, those whispers have become roaring winds." The servant met his gaze without flinch or apology. Truth has a way of surfacing, even beneath mountains of gold. Ignoring it will not undo what has begun. The tension hung thick as the air grew heavier in the palace's ornate halls. The sheikh's fingers clenched into fists at his sides, a gesture of control, of simmering fury, softened only by the gaze of those eyes that dared to meet his own without fear. "You carry secrets enough to unseat thrones," the sheikh murmured. "What else do you conceal beneath that threadbare cloak and defiant smile?" A faint shadow flickered across the servant's face. Pain, perhaps, or a memory too fierce to voice. The desert teaches its children to hide what must remain unseen. My past is a tapestry woven with betrayals and survival. The Sheikh's chest tightened. The facade of unbreakable pride trembled for a fleeting heartbeat. This man was no mere servant. He was a storm cloaked in humility, bearing a history that threatened the very foundation of the Sheikh's reign. As the envoy prepared the horses for departure, the servant's gaze lingered on the labyrinth of corridors, fading into darkness behind them. Beneath his sleeve, the silver bracelet, a delicate emblem etched with ancient symbols, caught the dying light, a quiet challenge to fate itself. The Sheikh caught that glimpse, and despite himself, felt the first crack in his armor of invulnerability. Mounting quickly, the caravan riders set off into the gathering night, their shadows melting into the desert's vast embrace. The stars above bore silent witness to the fragile alliance forming between two men, bound by pride, secrets, and an unspoken reckoning. The ride was long and harsh, the cold desert wind a stark contrast. To the heat of the palace's tensions, the Sheikh refrained from speaking, his mind tangled in a whirlwind of suspicion and reluctant curiosity. The servant sat close yet distant, his silence a fortress guarding secrets not yet ready to be unveiled. Finally, under a canopy of stars scattered like shattered diamonds, the caravan halted before a modest tent, far from the palace's golden splendor. Flickering lanterns cast long, trembling shadows across the sand, where figures cloaked in rough fabrics paced anxiously. The Sheikh dismounted, every muscle coiled with alertness. A meeting awaited, one poised to change the course of his rule. Yet before entering, his gaze searched the servant's face for signs of the man beneath the enigma. "You are no ordinary shadow," the Sheikh said quietly, a rare softness threading through his tone. "Tomorrow, this storm you carry will either bury us all or clear the path to truth." The servant's amber eyes met his, fierce and steady. "Then may the desert's winds guide us, not to destruction, but to a reckoning long overdue." Suddenly, a distant rumble shattered the stillness, a sound not carried by desert wind, but by the thunder of approaching horsemen. The messenger's voice cut through the night. "Trouble approaches, my lord. Horsemen bearing the standard of the northern rebels. They advance fast, too fast." The Sheikh's heart pounded with an ancient, primal rhythm, the pulse of battle and betrayal. The servant's hand slipped beneath his sleeve, fingers brushing the emblem once more, as if drawing strength from some unseen source. The moonlight painted sharp streaks over the encampment, as the Sheikh exchanged a glance with his enigmatic companion, a silent vow passing between them. In this moment, beneath the vast desert sky, the divide between master and servant dissolved into something more complex, more dangerous. The greatest test was no longer a riddle whispered in palace halls. It was a storm rising from the sands, bearing a name that echoed in the shadows of their past, and beneath the silver bracelet's glint, a secret waited, one destined to unravel empires and rewrite the fate of the Billionaire Sheikh forever. The caravan had barely settled under the tapestry of stars when a sharp wind swept through. The encampment, carrying with it a whisper of unease. The Billionaire Sheikh stood rigid, the weight of his mantle heavier than the desert night air. His dark eyes flickered toward the flickering lanterns that cast jittering shadows across the sand, mirroring the turmoil roiling beneath his composed exterior. The servant, still cloaked in modest robes, moved with an ease that belied the storm gathering in his amber gaze. His fingers brushed absent-mindedly against the delicate silver bracelet hidden beneath his sleeve, a relic that seemed to pulse with the secrets of forgotten deserts and battles yet unnamed. "You carry the desert's silence like armor," the Sheikh said, voice low and tinged with a grudging respect. "But silence is often the loudest warning of what's to come." The servant's lips curled into a faint smile, sharp as a blade hiding beneath cloth. "And sometimes the quietest shadows hide the fiercest storms." As they circled the fire, the tense distance between them throbbed with unspoken truths. The opulence of the palace was replaced by the raw vulnerability of the desert's embrace, a vast expanse that swallowed pride and power alike. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the tense-shadowed entrance, a messenger sent by the emir himself. His face was etched with urgency, eyes darting between the sheikh and the servant, as if trying to decode the tension that danced between them. "The northern rebellion advances faster than expected," the envoy reported, voice clipped and grave. "Reports say they've unmasked a traitor within your trusted circle. The emir demands immediate counsel." The sheikh's jaw clenched, the bite of betrayal sharper than any desert sandstorm. He turned sharply toward the servant, the tension between them snapping taut like a drawn bowstring. "Do you see now, Shadow? Your riddles were harbingers, not distractions. How deep does your knowledge go? What battles have you already fought in the silence of night?" The servant's amber eyes narrowed, the firelight flickering like ancient flames in their depths. "Deeper than you imagine, farther than these golden walls can reach." For a heartbeat, the desert seemed to hold its breath. The sheikh's voice dropped to a harsh whisper, fierce and urgent. "If you are a storm, then reveal your true name. Does it seek to destroy or rebuild?" The servant stepped closer, the rough fabric of his robe brushing against the plush leather of the sheikh's cloak. His hand slipped beneath the sleeve again, the silver bracelet catching the light as if awakening something ancient. "Names are weapons," he said softly, voice heavy with history. "But tomorrow, when the desert sun scorches the truth bare, my name will be a reckoning." A sudden sound shattered the charged silence, the distinct rumble of hooves pounding against the sand. Faster, closer. The camp stirred, warriors gripping weapons, their faces hardened by the certainty of war. The sheikh's dark eyes sharpened as he mounted his horse, the emblem of his power. Gleaming defiantly in the moonlight, his glance met the servant's, a silent pact forged in the fires of fate and fraught with peril. "You walk the edge of a knife, Shadow, but I am the storm that follows. The servant's amber gaze held steady, unflinching. Then together, we become the desert's fury. As they rode into the unfolding chaos, the night's shadows swallowed their figures, leaving behind only whispers in the wind. And beneath the silver filigree concealed on the servant's wrist, a secret beat like a heart, waiting to shatter empires and upend the very throne of the Billionaire Sheikh. The night pressed heavily against the vast desert sky as the caravan sat restless beneath a blanket of scabbard stars. The flickering lanterns cast uneven pools of light on the shifting sands, dancing shadows that seemed to echo the unease burning quietly between the Billionaire Sheikh and his enigmatic servant. Their silence was thick, broken only by the distant whistle of the wind, threading through the tents, carrying whispers from a world that neither dared fully trust. The Sheikh's dark eyes searched the servant's face once more, haunted by the riddle and the silver bracelet hidden beneath worn sleeves. That delicate emblem gleamed faintly in the firelight, a promise and a warning intertwined, just as the candlelight itself teased the contours of the servant's calm but resolute expression. "You move like a shadow, bound by secrets," the Sheikh's voice cut low, threaded with both curiosity and suspicion. "What storm brews beneath your calm? What truth cloaked in dust can you no longer hide?" The servant met his gaze steadily, amber eyes reflecting fierce defiance. "The desert does not forget its children, nor the debts they owe," he whispered. "There are loyalties forged in fire and blood, far beyond these golden walls." The opulence of the palace had drowned in the memory of their encounter, replaced now by the raw, unforgiving sands and a silence charged with destiny. The fire before them crackled loud against the desert's quiet, a fragile heartbeat amid a growing tempest. Suddenly, the sharp clip of hooves shattered the night's uneasy calm. Figures raced toward the camp, dust spiraling in their wake, urgency blazing in their hurried steps. The messenger from the emir was back, breathless and grim, holding news heavier than the desert night. "The northern rebels approach faster than we feared," he announced, voice tense, eyes darting like hawks between the Sheikh and his shadowed companion. "Our scouts report a traitor in your closest circle. The emir commands immediate counsel. Your presence at the front is demanded." The Sheikh's jaw tightened, the words slicing sharper than any blade. The threat was no longer distant. It had threaded into the very fabric of his empire, striking at its fragile core. His gaze locked briefly on the servant, whose expression remained unreadable, but whose eyes flickered with an uncanny knowing, like a man who had long stood at the edge of storms. "What game do you play beyond your riddles and veiled warnings?" the Sheikh demanded, voice a low snarl masking a tangle of anger and intrigue. The servant's lips curled into a thin smile, edged with shadows. "I am neither player nor pawn. I am the desert winds themselves, unseen but relentless. The past you ignore has claws yet to sink deep." Words hung like smoke between them, thick and suffocating. The firelight revealed the faint tremor in the Sheikh's clenched fists, a crack forming in his unyielding armor. Pride warred with fear, Resolve clashed with doubt, and beneath it all, a fragile flicker of something unsaid passed between the two men. The palace had always been the Sheikh's fortress, a golden cage where power ruled unchallenged. But now, within this desert encampment, that fortress seemed miles away, replaced by a looming reckoning. The servant shifted, glancing once again at the silver bracelet. Quite soon, it will no longer be enough to answer with riddles and defiance. You will need to confront what waits beneath the sands. The truth I carry. A distant horn blared, sending a shiver through the desert air. Warriors stirred in the camp, swords drawn with practiced hands, and eyes hardened by countless battles. The emir's envoy urged haste, the moment for words fading fast before the inevitability of war. The sheikh's cloak billowed as he mounted his steed, a living emblem of command. Yet the fire in his eyes now bore something new, a hardened awareness that his dominion faced threats not only from rebels, but also from the mysterious spirit cloaked in modest robes at his side. You are no longer a mere shadow, the sheikh said quietly, voice carrying the weight of fragile trust and unspoken challenge. Tomorrow, we face more than swords on the battlefield. We face the storms sown into our own souls. The servant's amber gaze held steady, unwavering. Then may the desert winds carry us through the storm, whether to ruin or rebirth. As they rode toward the looming conflict, the silent night seemed to pulse with the promise of upheaval. The stars above watched cold and distant, as if bearing witness to the fragile alliance forged in fire and bound by secrets deeper than any treachery. And just as the caravan vanished into the horizon's dark embrace, a sudden movement caught the sheikh's eye. A fleeting shadow beneath the servant's sleeve, a glint of silver that shifted like a heartbeat from a hidden place. His voice barely a whisper, barely heard over the desert winds. The servant murmured, with haunting certainty, the name I bear will shake empires and break thrones. Prepare yourself, for the greatest storm is not beyond the horizon. It rides with me. The sheikh's breath caught, the weight of that final promise sinking into the depths of his soul. Fear, hope, and fierce anticipation wove a silent symphony within him. Somewhere beyond the sands, fate tightened its grip, and the desert's long-hidden secrets stirred awake. The true battle had only just begun. The first light of dawn seeped through the ornate arches of the palace, casting gentle rays upon the vast tapestry of woven silk and gold beneath the billionaire sheikh's feet. The night's storm had passed, leaving in its wake a fragile silence that held the promise of renewal. He stood by the marble balcony, the cool breeze brushing against his finely embroidered robe, stirring memories and truths unearthed in the desert's shadows. The silver bracelet hidden beneath his sleeve, the servant's enigmatic token, had become a symbol not of mystery, but of an alliance forged in trials by fire and riddle. The servant appeared beside him, no longer the shadow cloaked in modest rags, but a man reborn from past wounds and secrets. His amber eyes held no defiance now, only the steady calm of one who had fought battles far older than stones and swords. Their silent gaze exchanged a depth of understanding that words no longer needed. The desert tested us, the Sheikh finally said, voice deep and steady. And in its harshness, I found something I never expected. Not weakness in you, but strength born of fire and resilience. The servant nodded, the lines of hardship softened by a newfound peace. And you've learned that pride alone cannot shield an empire. Trust is the fortress, stronger than any wall of gold. Behind them, the sprawling palace began to stir. Courtiers, once distant and wary, now moved with a renewed respect. The whispers that had once carried suspicion were swallowed by the undeniable truth of transformation. A ruler humbled, yet unbroken, and a servant revealed as a rightful guardian of destiny. News soon arrived that the rebellion at the northern borders had been quelled, not through endless war, but through careful strategies born of shared wisdom. The traitor, within the complex web of palace intrigue, had been unmasked, exposed by the servant's insight and the Sheikh's willingness to listen, a testament to their newfound partnership. As the emir's envoy sent word of peace, the Sheikh summoned his closest advisors, yet his thoughts lingered, not on power or vengeance, but on the journey that had brought him here, from relentless pride to reconciled humility, from isolation to unexpected companionship. In the heart of the palace gardens, bathed in the golden sunlight, now softening the desert's unforgiving heat, the heroine awaited. She had watched from afar, her own trials etched in quiet strength and hope. When the Sheikh approached, the tension that once defined their encounters had melted into the warmth of shared understanding. Their hands met, fingers intertwined like threads woven back together after fraying through storms. The years of distance, secrets, and pain dissolved in that gentle touch. "Forgiveness is no weakness," she whispered, eyes glistening with tears of relief. "It is the rebirth of love." He cupped her face, a smile breaking free like dawn's first light. "And love is the true empire we build, stronger than any throne." Children's laughter echoed softly from the distant courtyards, carrying the sound of futures yet unwritten. The once unforgiving desert had softened into a landscape of possibility, fertile where trust and courage had taken root. Together, the Sheikh and his beloved walked through blooming gardens, their steps sure and unshaken. The golden spires of the palace gleamed with renewed promise, symbols not only of wealth, but of hearts mended and destinies intertwined. Behind them, the palace doors closed gently, the echo marking the end of a chapter of pride and silent battles. Ahead, life awaited, a tapestry woven from forgiveness, courage, and the unbreakable bond forged under desert skies. The servant, now a guardian and friend, stood watching from a shadowed veranda, his gaze soft but vigilant. The silver bracelet gleamed faintly, a quiet reminder that the past's shadows had been faced and transformed. In that tranquil moment, the desert wind whispered once more, carrying a truth that would outlast empires. True power lies not in gold or glory, but in hearts brave enough to change and love enough to forgive. And so, beneath the endless sky, a new dawn rose over the emirate, bright, unwavering, and filled with the endless promise of peace.